There's been a really long history that's kept anyone who's from a marginalized background away from being the person who's center stage or the main character in a film or anything. There's so many people in the world, and the majority, if we were to actually talk about the majority globally, they are not white, middle-class people who are heterosexual. That's just not, factually, that's just not what's happening. I didn't know I wanted to become a playwright. I thought I wanted to go into media and comms. And then when I was 16, I moved from Malaysia to go to school here. I think the bulk of my teenage years, the bits that kind of mattered, were in Australia. And I was lucky, I think, my own kind of personality fit with dominant Australian culture a lot more easily than it did with Malaysian culture. It's a lot less socially conservative here. It was a lot easier to come out. I think my plays, I would like for them to be invitations for the audience to have any particular view that they have put on the floor and challenged. Even if they're views that I agree with, I think there's always that thing of feeling like what you think is the thing that's right based on all your personal experience and evidence and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it is. But I love finding the question within those firm beliefs and just putting that question onto the floor in front of the audience and let them kind of realize that there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in what we're convinced is true. I love it when people come to a show of mine and then they walk out and they are just not necessarily like filled with doubt, but just a little bit of doubt that makes them go, okay, why do I actually believe this? Why do I think this is how the world works? One time I wrote a play called Terrorism. There were a lot of ASIO raids that were happening, and I was really, frustrated that this was happening because people were being profiled based on their race. And so I wrote Terrorism because I was really angry and I didn't know what to do about it. I wanted to recreate that feel of how the media, when they report on terrorism, it really starts to feel really overwhelming. I think the poetic style of the play meant that it came across as a really sometimes cold, intellectual reflection on those events. And I think there was someone who came to see the show, and after the Q&A session, they came up to me and they were just like, do you know that this is something that's actually happening to people? And I was like, yes. It really struck home for me how, you want to make a play about real stuff. But if you don't get the tone right, if you don't get the facts right, if you don't get the structure and the story right, if you don't do enough research, if you don't actually talk to the community it's happening to, it's not going to come across. It can be really confronting for someone who is of that community to then come and see that show and feel like what's happening to them in reality is happening again when they come see that show that they hope might tell their side of the story. In early 2017, when we were trying to find another show that we wanted to make, the collective that I was working with, Discolor Nation, which was an ensemble of people of color, we wanted to move away from just making shows about race. We wanted to look at what the ensemble was interested in on a personal level. The thing about queer representation is that bulk of airtime that's given to queer representation is still led with white people. And so as a group of mostly queer people of color, we thought, what do we actually want to talk about?
Can I just get you guys to come in a circle and sing it without doing choreo, and we'll just make sure that everyone knows exactly when they're coming in.
It was a drunken meeting of Discolor Nation. We were at the Clyde, and we were tossing around a few ideas, and this is the one that we thought was really interesting because the cast was very into musicals and into comedy. And so we thought, well, that's it, isn't it? Musicals and comedy and gays. Our favorite things.
Romeo is Not the Only Fruit is based on Romeo and Juliet, but it kind of rips that apart by, I guess, exploring what it's like to be a queer woman in theatre and what it's like to be represented as a queer woman on stage.
Juliet's a young adult coming into her own, and she wants to be a pilot, and she's living in this conservative town called Verona. Darcy, who's this rare white person, strolls into town, and they fall in love. And because they're two queer women, there's an incompetent dead lesbian chorus trying to get in between them, because if they manage to fall in love, they're going to die at the end of the story, because that's what always happens if you're a queer woman of colour, particularly.
There's this trope called the bury your gays trope, where a lot of queer women end up dead or unhappy in some way in media. And that's kind of what the show tackles.
Another tale of two lovers. Watch them close and see them blush. Set the scene in fair Verona. Start to feel that gentle crush. Why do the lesbians always die? Why?
Romeo became an outlet for us to respond to that trope in a way that A, gave us autonomy, and B, was something we actually wanted to do, because it's really hard sometimes, I think, having to always make serious shows about serious issues.
I often talk about how when we want to tell people the truth, we either have to make them laugh or they'll kill us. And so this is a way to tell people what's going on, how we're feeling as minorities and queer people, and then making them laugh and making them listen, because that's what people will respond to is joy.
This process with Jean has been wildly different, not only in that we've had the creator in the room the whole time, but she's been executing her own vision, and even just the feel of the show. Most of the rehearsal rooms I've been in have been overwhelmingly white. This is kind of the first time that I've been able to be in a rehearsal room where everyone mostly is Asian, and you don't feel exploited as an Asian actor.
Representation of people of colour or queer representation, or really just minority groups, is generally abysmal, very sad, very, like, for me growing up, part of the reason it was so difficult for me to accept that I wanted to be an actor was because I never saw anyone that looked like me.
In shows that I've auditioned for and them considering me for only certain roles, just the number of opportunities really diminishes. And they're not necessarily roles that are suited to my performance ability or my vocal type or anything like that. It's just merely, this is the person of colour role in this show, so this is what you're auditioning for.
I have never been in a production where white people aren't the majority, which I think is saying a lot, because I've been a student and then working as an actor now for 4 years in Melbourne. So it's quite a unique opportunity to work on something where I am literally the token white person.
It was absolutely a conscious choice for Jean, but it's also, I think, her most natural instinct is to work with people of color and people from a range of backgrounds, because that's who she's interested in elevating and cultivating their talent.
The lack of diversity globally, I think, is finally, it's been a problem for decades and people have been fighting against it for decades. But I hope that we've reached a point where we've crested that wave and like it's really just uphill from here, I think. And we've known, the people of diverse backgrounds have always known that if we see someone who looks like us, who's telling a story that's about us, we are hungry for those stories. We have been left out for a very long time. We're gonna go. We're gonna throw money to see those stories.